Hey everybody, welcome to Losing Your Mind with Chris Cosentino. I'm your host, Chris Cosentino. We are here to talk about people that inspire, and all my guests are inspiring in so many different ways. And I'm really looking forward to digging deep into how they got to where they are, to the top of their game, how hard they've worked, how much they've given up, and how they're giving back. So without further ado, here's our next guest. Hey everybody, welcome to the newest episode of Losing Your Mind with Chris Cosentino. I am here with a schoolyard playground friend, Daniel Handler, aka Lemony Snicket. And this is the newest one, Poison for Breakfast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's good to see you. I think we should make it clear that we were not children when we were schoolyard friends. I don't know if that makes it better or worse.
I think it's really important to make that clear. We have not known each other that long.
No.
Our children went to school together, so we used to hang out on the schoolyard and watch our kids run around like crazy kids.
Yeah. I basically looked for any other parent who wasn't like a fountain of earnestness. That's just what I think. Like if I met a parent who was like, "Are you worried about like what kind of sunscreen?" Then I was like, excuse me. And if I found a parent who was like, "Shouldn't there be an open bar like right there?" Then I would hang out with that parent. That was generally how I ran it.
I think there was a moment where I was in that playground area and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" I think you were standing next to me, and I think that was like the moment where you were just like, "Oh, hey, what's going on?" It was done.
Right. Yeah. Dropping the F-bomb on the playground is definitely a way to get my attention. Yeah.
So,
I mean, God bless the earnest parents, I will say, because they worked really hard at that school. But
they
sometimes,
did.
Yeah, but sometimes like the culture of like humorless concern was not that I didn't grok that very well. That didn't connect to me.
No, it took a lot of the fun out. I mean, it's like you're kind of reliving that moment because your kids are going back, your kids going to school and you get to go see it through their eyes as an adult. And there was so much angst, I think, by a lot of parents and nervousness and freakouts that it just kind of made it not so much fun until we had Go-Go Wednesdays or Fridays. What was
that? Yeah, I guess also like I get nervous when I'm with other parents who can't admit that sometimes it's like a boring gig and an annoying gig. Like it's a miracle to raise a child and it's full of glory and joy, but like sometimes
it's boring.
It's awful. Yeah. And if they can't admit to that at all, that just is like not. It's like couples who say they never fight, and you're like, "Well, I give you another 6 weeks then." Like,
or you're just a really shitty liar.
Yeah, right. You hope that they're lying.
So, it's pretty amazing to me how you have written multiple different books. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, you and I always say what you do is completely crazy, and you said, well, it's the same thing for you to me because I stand there and cook all day. But because I can't fathom the idea of putting all those words that are in my head onto a piece of paper and having it make any logical sense whatsoever. You have this inept and incredible ability to make people become part of that story. They fall right into the book and breathe and live it. And it's become like Lemony Snicket has become a cultural phenomenon. And I'm really, really excited to hear how you came up with the pseudonym Lemony Snicket. And what was that catalyst to get that all started?
Desperation was the main catalyst, I would say. I was I had the name Lemony Snicket for years before I thought I would do anything with it, and when I never thought I would write anything for children. I was trying to be a novelist. I was straight out of college. I had like a boring office job, and part of my first novel, The Basic Ape, makes fun of right-wing organizations because that's my idea of a good time. And so I was on the phone with a right-wing organization because I wanted them to mail me like the ridiculous brochure. it's still nowadays you can do it online. It's so easy to get online to like fun lists. So people send you their horrible brochures just online, but then you had to call a lot. And so I was on the phone with some woman and I said, yeah, can you send me your materials? And she was like, yeah, sure. What's your name? And then I was like, ooh, like, I don't want to say my name to this woman. That's not going to go well. So I just said something, which was Lemony Snicket. And so then it became a name that my friends and I would use all the time. You know, we'd like reserve a table under the name Lemony Snicket just to hear them be like, Lemony Snicket, like party of four, or like pick up our pizza that way. We made up like all kinds of cocktails called Lemony Snicket. And it was just a phrase that kind of echoed in my little post-collegiate crowd. But my first book was about high school students, the Basic Eight. And so some editors at some publishing houses were interested in like if I might write something for young people. And I mean, at the time, I just thought like anybody who wants me to do anything. I mean, I'm sure you have the same thing starting out. It's like if someone is just like, here's a little thing you can do. I'm like, I'm the best at that. I'm the only one who can do it. I'll be there on Monday. And so I wanted to do it.
Till you make it, I think is what they call that.
Yeah, well, and just like, and if you can't do it, then you'll get fired. And that's fine too. You know, like there's no, you didn't lose really. If you, yeah. I actually remember, I'm digressing from my own story, but I actually remember when like a boss where I lasted like 4 days said to me like, why did you lie to me? Like, why did you tell me you could do this thing that you couldn't do? And I was like, what? Like, that's a silly question. So I could like work here and make money. What do you like? That's the whole system we have here.
We set this world up this way, so I have to kind of fudge my way.
You're not my girlfriend. I'm not lying. You know, it's not like some egregious lie about me. It was like you asked if I could do a thing, and I was like, I bet I could fake doing that. It was like, nope. Turns out you can't, my friend. It's like, okay, no hard feelings. But he
has. It wasn't anything like super important, like repairing somebody's car brakes or.
No, I was like 23 years old. You know, anybody who let me do anything was already like a 50% chance of failure. You know, right. So it's not like I rushed into an operating room and I was like, I can do this. Ocular surgery, this is no problem. I don't even remember what it was. It was like an office job. And it was like, do you know how to work, Mac Pro or something? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I don't know what that is, but it's some stupid computer thing. How hard can it be? Too hard was the answer. But anyway, where was I? No, I think I just got interested. I think I liked the idea of the space that you have for books when you're young. You know, that you want to be attached to it, that you want to live in it. And so when I started writing for children, I could feel that. I could feel kind of moving into that space, and that felt like a good space to live in. And it's more fun than anything else that I do. I enjoy a lot of everything that I do, but like being in the kind of space where like a 10-year-old is thinking about a book is really fun for me. That feels delicious.
It's a really powerful medium. I mean, you're giving kids a form of escapism, right? And at the same time, they're being educated. And that's a really, really great feeling. I mean, as a young kid, when I was a kid, I mean, I remember reading and just being like totally into it. Granted, my dyslexia has slowed down the process, but yeah. I still got to have that imagination effect happening when I'm reading, and it's like wanting to be in that time and that place. And I think you created something that people just constantly keep going back to. And it's like, this is going to go like crazy. When it showed up yesterday at the house, Tatiana comes running over. She's like, ooh, this is great.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something you can carry with you. A good book is something that can stay with you. And I like that kind of ambiguous part of the mind where you know you're not reading, but you're thinking about the story anyway. And in children, that's so much stronger. But I mean, I meant it when I said it's the same thing you do, because I think what we both do has this thing in common where like the best thing about food is eating it with people. Right? It's like, I mean, your restaurants, you walk in, like everyone's having a fantastic time. Everyone's sitting around the table. They're having like the most delicious stuff they've ever eaten in their lives. And they're like laughing their asses off. I mean, that is like your restaurants in San Francisco are where I took people when I was like, all I want is like 11 people like folding their sides with laughter, or listening intently to something, like having some argument. And the food is like unbelievably delicious, but also it's like its job is to like propel you into happiness, right? And so it's almost like the food doesn't matter, although if the food's no good, you're gonna be like cranky and you're not gonna have a good time. So it's this weird combination where it's like the most essential thing and the thing that matters the least. And that's kind of what I like about writing for children too, is that it's these words that will take them to this space, but like that's where I want them to be, and so you have to try to make language that guides them somewhere else, which for me is really cool.
How do you get into that mode? I think there's a lot of people that want to understand how to get to the point where you are. I mean, it's really important. And I think that this whole podcast series is about inspiration and people learning and growing from these experiences that other people have had and getting to the top of their game. You graduated from Wesleyan. You have really honed the craft. How do you explain that to somebody who's a young budding writer who wants to, whether it be writing for children or writing, anything, because it's not an easy task. I mean,
no, I memean, it's almost like what we were saying about parenting. It's like there's a certain amount of drudgery, particularly when you're trying to get good. But even after you know what you're doing, you have to write so much crap to write well, like so much crap. And so you have to keep doing it. And particularly when you're starting out, I mean, I tell people sometimes, they're like, oh, I wrote like 50 pages of a book and then I got stuck. I didn't know what to do. And like, I don't think it's very good. And I was like, okay, but like, good, you got to write another 50 pages. You got to keep working on it. And I mean, what helps me in terms of like the actual process is, I go completely analog. I write on legal pads, and I like to go places. It's one of the things I missed most during the pandemic, was to go to a cafe or like a crummy diner or a library or other kind of weird spaces where you can sit and write and people will leave you alone. And I loved being that completely detached. It was like literally no one knew where I was, even though I wasn't that far from home often, but that I was sitting and doing that. And I think it's hard for people whose jobs are on the same machine that is bringing you like the news of the day and the text from your mom and like the emails about what you're supposed to do tomorrow. It's really hard to do work on that same machine. And so I'm always glad to be on a machine that is like not telling me, it's not like the new trailer just dropped for something. Like, when do you want to watch that for a while? And then like, why don't you check out the president's doing? Oh my God, like that's a disaster. Who hates the president? I want to read that essay. And then before you know it, it's like 2 hours later and you haven't done anything and you're like stressed and empty. So I like being separate from the like churning daily digital culture that is causing everyone pain and stress.
When you go to those different environments, do those inspire some of your writing? Is there things that you see that click a box or make something happen?
For sure. And also, the more boring it is, like boring is the stuff you don't remember, right? And so if I go to a cafe and I'm working and then I see someone like fiddling with the door to the bathroom and like it's like a bad door, I'm like, oh yeah, bad doors. Like, and then whatever room I'm trying to describe in the book, I'm like, there's something, what can I make that's like badly put together? Because you notice that, but that's not something that you notice like when you're thinking about inspiration, right? It's something it has to be kind of poked back into your head. So either that and like other people. I mean, it's another writer I know told me that during COVID, he missed strangers more than his friends, because it's like your friends, you're like, okay, here we go with like a Zoom drink. But like strangers, you don't get to like just bump up against somebody. And I like that a lot too, just hearing like little snatches of conversation or just thinking about a type of person you haven't thought for a while. You see them and you're like, oh yeah, you, like, I haven't seen this for a while. I got to put you in there. Like
character development from strangers.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're a snappy dresser, but you're really boring. That's interesting. Let's play with that. Let's see where that goes. So yeah, other people and little things in the surroundings. Yeah. And I think again, if you're off screen, you're more open to that, right? It's like if you take a walk, you're going to see a bunch of stuff. If you take a walk with your phone, you're going to be like, oh, here's Joe Biden taking a walk with me.
It's interesting how much the phone has taken away from the ability for people to focus on their craft at hand.
Yeah, I mean, I was like I resisted a cell phone for as long as I possibly could. I didn't have one for so long. And then basically when my son became a teenager, when he became the age, like you could no longer deny him a phone. Like when he's just like, that is how every human being that I socialize with is like making plans and talking to each other. I think he really was like, you either got to homeschool me, like, like we either got to live like Quakers or like I got to get a phone. And so then I was like, well, now I want to talk to you. So like, I got to get a phone. And then of course it's addictive. It's like you're like, I can get a car anywhere. I can find out where the espresso place is. Like, I don't have to remember the name of that album anymore. They remember it for me. Like everything, it just becomes this like depository. So yeah, it's really hard. And I'm not surprised that people get really easily distracted from it, but I try to keep that as far away from me as possible too.
I like that you are working analog because I'm very much so.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I mean, your industry is one of those things that like really can't be replaced digitally. Like you can order your food delivered, but like there's someone's chopping an onion someplace.
Yeah, there's no robots doing the work. I mean, there can be. You can buy pre-chopped things, but they always taste funky. I think it's a really interesting, process to think about. You go from a typewriter, the old, right? There was a big joke at the house the other day. I choose a form of skiing, which is telemark, which is the old school way.
Yeah.
And one of the kids was like, well, the world's progressed. They now have new modern skis where your heel doesn't come up. And I was like, uh-huh. Like I enjoy it, right? Some people still enjoy typing on a typewriter. And I use that as an example. He's like, but we don't need typewriters anymore. I was like, well, the keyboard still hasn't changed, dude. It came from a typewriter. So they get kind of lost and forget like what it's like to leave the house and not have basically I call the phone a low jack, so you know where your children are all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, I like definitely the movement of phones where they were used to be attached to buildings, that part seems made up. When you're like, yeah, there used to be a phone like in a house, and then you'd call because you thought a person that you wanted to talk to was also in that house, but sometimes there was another person in the house instead, and so they picked up the phone. Like no one picks up someone else's phone now. I mean, often the technology-wise you can't do it, but like that, yeah, like, oh, I wonder if the restaurant's crowded. We're gonna call the restaurant. Let's just call them. There's a phone inside the restaurant. They're gonna pick up and be like, yeah, it's not crowded. All that sounds crazy.
Yeah, now you point kids like, do you know what that is? And they see the phone booth on the side of the road. They're like, no idea. No.
Yeah, they're like, that's where a guy pees.
I wasn't going to go there, but you're right. You're definitely right. Henceforth, the penny loafer became the dime loafer to the quarter loafer to use the money in your pocket to make a phone call.
Was the coin for a phone?
I don't ever think there was a penny phone. I think it was probably, I don't know. But I remember people putting change in there for phone calls.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah. Wow, I never thought about that. I guess it was so you can make a call.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So you have also done books, not just for children. I mean, you've got a whole slew, and those are under the Daniel Handler pseudonym. That's you.
That's me. Oh, there they are. Yeah. There you go. You got the marriage book. You got the sex book. What else you got? I've been trying to read the books. Oh, you got the violence among teenage girls and old people book. Yeah, you got a lot of them. Thank you. You're so sweet to keep buying them.
Of course. Come on. And I think I like the fact that you have such a varying range of all different things, but also everything goes back to and connects with the people. And like we were just talking about before, that people watching, that whole that is a powerful tool, actually, it sounds like, for you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just like free material, like, and I mean, you held up We Are Pirates, like that is about some teenage girls and they team up with some old people who live in an assisted living center, basically, and they steal a boat and they commit acts of piracy in the San Francisco Bay. And like part of that was from a lot of public transportation writing where I would take a bus to like a cafe to work. And often at the end of the day, it would also be the end of a school day. So I'd be like on a bus with like high school students. And I'm, of course, totally invisible to them, so they don't think anyone's listening to them. And they're fascinating. And like I began to see like angry girls, like gangs of angry girls. And kind of like as this wave of feminism, I think, kind of hit like adolescent, like just girls who were like angry at guys and like, stuff had happened, and to hear them like seething and being angry, I was like, oh, this is great. I can't wait for this. And so then when I started to think about like, I think I'll write a pirate book. I think pirates would be fun. I was like, oh, those angry girls, they're going to do it so well. And it's like, that's only because I took the bus. That's only because I wandered around. I mean, I have nieces and, friends who have daughters and things like that, but like you don't get to eavesdrop on them. You don't get to see them as they are with their peers. Even your own kids, you don't really get to see how they are with those peers. You get like a few snatches of conversation if they have people over and they forget that you're in the house. You walk down the hallway, you just hear, it's like even a different tone of voice, all that magic.
And then you appear, and then all of a sudden it shuts off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Who are you talking about?
Right. They're just like, we were talking about American history. Like they don't even know. Yeah, they can't even guess what you think would be an appropriate topic of conversation because they think of you as so old. Yeah, and so going out and about and looking at strangers, looking at eavesdropping on people is really something that I miss. I'm going to be traveling for the first time. I haven't been on an airplane this whole time. I'm going to be going soon a couple places to promote this book, and like the airport is going to be finally like a bunch of strangers. I'm going to miss that. I mean, it's going to be very exciting.
Are you going to wear like a really cool, like, are you going to get like a underwater helmet or something really cool to travel with to make it easy? Could be fun.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know. I don't have any, I'm vaccinated and I don't have any anxiety about catching things about it. I'm kind of fatalistic about it, which I'm not trying to encourage anyone not to do the right thing, but I just, I'm not possessed with anxiety about it. Like, I'm just like, well, I hope I don't die, but I'm definitely going to someday. So
it's, so let's talk about the transition from it being on paper, onto the television and screen. That was a really, really crazy big thing.
Yeah, it's really hard. Both times it's really hard. I mean, film is a collaborative medium. There's no getting around it. You can't possibly do everything yourself. Even like the deepest film auteur still has like hundreds of people around who are doing stuff. And so it's really hard to work with other people's visions, and you want them to get excited and do the best thing that they can do, but you also want you don't want them to step all over your thing. And then it's really expensive, particularly a series of unfortunate events, which has a whole world that you have to kind of build. It's not like 5 people in the present day where you can like find the best apartment to film it. You got to build all this stuff, and it's really expensive. And I'm sure it's the same in your business. Like, the people who are in charge of saying, like, okay, it is now time to spend this money, are petrified all the time because it's like an ocean of money and they don't want to lose it. If they lose it, they're going to get fired. And so you have to write in such a way that sells them making it all the time, which is a different trick from writing in a book. Like, if you write a book, you want to fire up people's imagination. If you write a script, you have to be like, this script is going to be so exciting when we film it that like you're going to feel okay about writing up these huge checks. I guess they don't really write checks, whatever they do.
Transfers or whatever.
I picture like the money in the silo, and they open it and then it just comes pouring out, and like the costume guy's like, oh, here's my budget, which is, I don't think that's how it actually goes. So but like in film and television, it's the money. Everyone's terrified about the money all the time.
Did you find that you had, like you were just saying a moment ago, you have to change the way that the writing happens for the screen? So Are they looking for that? I'm sure you've heard this. We need the arc, the story arc.
Yeah, well, they always have some for when I started with Netflix, they were all into leaning in because there'd been that book Lean In, which was basically telling executives that to pretend that you're listening, you should lean in, which I thought was funny that they were like, we need to how can we get people to lean in? I was like, how can we get people to fake being interested? Let's try interesting them.
Let's make it so they want to watch it. It's
Yeah,
you want to create that is like, you want that return, just like in a restaurant, you want the return guest, you want that viewer, you want that loyal, believer to come back over and over again. And the new book comes out, they're going to go straight to the store or pre-order it, and
right.
come back and watch it on the screen.
And in general, that kind of engagement, no matter what it is, comes from just really interesting stuff. And it's unpredictable in certain ways. It's like you never know what's going to taste so good that people are going to want to go back and back. You're never going to know what story is going to draw more people in than another story. But I think when you start working for large companies that produce that kind of thing, they want to believe in a formula. So so it's the same with like ARC or leaning in. It's like they always have some magic phrase. And they'll come in sometimes, because there'll be some like company-wide meeting where people will be like, this is the new phrase. And then they'll come in and be like, okay, everybody, like this is like our show's got to be this. And I learned to stop being like, that's not even a real word or something, because I just learned to be like, yeah, sure, sounds good. But what it reminded me of most is like when I was living in a dorm in college, and there'd always be like one guy at the end of the hallway who'd like get stoned in the middle of the night and have some crazy idea, so we just like open the doors and be like, we got to do like bacon wrapped ice cream, we'd be like, go to bed, Milo, this is like, it's too late. That's what it reminded me of. So film people would come in with like a hot idea. So yeah, I mean, I'm working on a project now, and like when it started, the buzzword was toxic masculinity. They were like, this project is going to like tackle toxic masculinity in this way. And now they're referring to it almost as the opposite. They're like, it's going to be they have new buzz phrases for it. And it's
changed a lot about
that. Yeah. But I mean, it's because like there is no magic formula for getting people excited. You just have to be excited about it. And you have to, work with people who can present it in such a way that maybe people will get excited. But when you're working with a large company, they think there's a formula for it.
Did you enjoy the collaboration and working with all those others? Did you learn a lot from them?
I learned a lot. Yeah. And parts of it I really enjoyed. And parts were terrible. But I mean, it felt good for me. Like I'm usually by myself doing my thing, and it felt good for me. So I had a really good writer's room. I'm gesturing this way because we met in my dining room. And I got these writers together, and that was really fun to work with them. And then it's really fun to just watch them kind of grow and stake out their own careers as a result. Like one of the writers in my room, Joe Trace, just won an Emmy for another project that he did. And that just makes me happy. He was like, like a young dude starting out. This was like his big gig to get into this writer's room. And he and I didn't work very much together at the beginning, and we started working together a lot, and it was really great. And so those lessons about working with people and trying to make people happy, it was the first time that I was a real boss, like really had to think about how to get other people to work together in an inspirational way, and really think about to make them feel like they're not getting exploited or ripped off or stuff like that. And that was really new to me. I'd never done that before. And trying to learn that like you want to be the cool boss, but you can't just spoil everybody all the time. It doesn't make you a good boss. All that stuff. And
it becomes non-effective. Production levels go down. But also, I mean, you became a mentor, and that must feel really great. That like you just said, you wanted to work with writing, and you pushed.
I mean, I had some really good people early in my writing attempts who were really good for me. I had a great professor at Wesleyan who I kept in touch with. And then when I started writing children's books, I met some children's authors who'd been doing it for a while. And I felt that nurturing, and that's like night and day. If you feel like you can call someone with a stupid question, it's really empowering. People always talk about it like it's like the passing on of wisdom, but I think it's just like when you're just like, I don't know what this phrase means. I'm like, I mean, I can't ask the people I'm working with because I'll reveal myself to be as deep an idiot as I am, like I need to do it. And so, yeah, so I try to do that if I meet younger writers, or sometimes they're not even that much younger, they're just starting out. But if I meet people who are doing something, I try to say, like, there's a network, come on, we gotta help out people who are in the state we were in.
That's amazing. So here's a good question then. So I have been writing cookbooks, as you know.
Yeah.
And when you're doing it, I mean, when I was in school, they always said, don't write like you speak, right? Now, when I'm doing the cookbooks, they're like, this doesn't sound like you. Can you write like you speak? It's very confusing because you're getting two different messages. Your teachers were saying, don't write like you speak. It's ridiculous. And then the publisher is saying, please, this doesn't sound like you. Why? Well, I was taught not to.
Well, I mean, I think the trouble with reading and writing in education is that you end up getting it from this academic perspective that some people use for the rest of their lives, but most people don't. And it's the same with reading. It's like most people, how they read is that they pick up a book and they find it interesting and they think about it for a while, and they don't like it or whatever. And that in school, as you grow older, you're kind of taught that there's like a secret code. You're like, we're going to read Moby Dick, and it's like, you're not going to understand it. And then I'm going to explain this secret code. And then you're going to write this secret code down in a 3-page paper that sounds like nothing you would ever say in this world or the next. And like, that's just not a great game to learn if you're not going to be an English professor. If you are going to be an English professor, I guess that's what you have to learn, but it's not how to do it. So yeah, I think actually, when I look at writers, they always make a breakthrough when they start writing like I know them to be. Like if I know them personally and then I read their book and I'm like, oh, that's you, they're always onto something. So Andrew Sean Greer is a big friend of mine, and he's written a bunch of lovely books, but always in person, he was hilarious. And his books were always really sweet. And then finally, he started putting humor in the books, where his books were getting funnier and funnier. And I was like, oh, now he's cooking. And I think it's that way too. So yeah. And I mean, from a cookbook from you, nobody wants a cookbook from you that opens with like, Italy is a wonderful country with a rich history. Like,
but how do you explain somebody to get over that hurdle? Because that is, I mean, I struggle with that. And look, like it's not, writing is not my life, right? I love to read, as you can see. These are all cookbooks. This is some of a 3,000 cookbook collection. I love reading them, but I think there's a point in which when you try to write something, you want it to, like I said a moment ago, I do want it to sound like me. How does that person get over that hump of transitioning to that level, that ability to be able to write like they speak, or to communicate in a way that people feel it's their voice?
I mean, I think you just got to keep doing it. I think kind of excising your own self-consciousness or kind of lessons that you've been taught that stick to you like baggage, that aren't doing you any good. There's some lessons you keep with you all your life because they're helping you, but there's some stuff that's just like not helping you. And I think it just takes time, but I think you have to keep on doing it. And I think you will begin to sense like, oh, this is what I am. This is really what I want to do. And it's hard because particularly when you're starting, I think it's like, you don't know what you're doing. So you're desperately flailing around. But yeah, you got to get rid of that stuff.
It's like you want that, like I joke every time I get a COVID test, I'm like, can you take away that memory? Maybe I can ask you to take away that part of my education from.
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think you and I have clicked a little bit, and also why like I love going to your restaurants is because your restaurants have that thing that is like, it is inventive and it is delicious, but it's like not pretentious. And whenever, like when you're actually there and you stop by and I'm like, what should I eat? And you're always like, the salmon. But you're not just like, let me tell you an interesting story. So there's like a farm on the other side of the hill where they do this special thing, because that's like my least favorite restaurant thing. Oh, it's terrible. And so your restaurants are like hanging out with you. Even when you're not there, they're like hanging out with you, because the waiters are like, okay, we did something crazy with oysters. Like, here's the deal. They don't say like oysters, which have a wonderful,
No pun
certain
intended.
pungency to them. Yeah. And I'm going to give you a lesson about the 11 kinds of oysters. And you're like, oh, but I'm with my friends. Please stop talking. Like, go bring us a bunch of cocktails and then some good food. That's all we want. And I don't know how you figure that out or how long it took, but like, that's really important. And particularly, I think in where I am, where like pretentious restaurants, there's so many pretentious restaurants in San Francisco that are just like insufferable. And then my wife always teases me, but once she and I went out to this place where they set up tables in the middle of a field, and they're like bringing all this food, and it's like an endless story. They're telling you every story about every bite. And finally at the end, they said, do you want to go see where the strawberries are from? And I was like, if they're from a volcano, then yes. Like, if they're made by unicorns, I totally want to go see where they're from. But are they strawberry plants? I think they're strawberry plants. I'm like, no, I don't want to go see a strawberry plant. I've seen one before. What? Like,
I have one in a pot in my backyard.
Yeah. Like, hey, I'm paying you in cash. You want to go see the ATM where I got it out? Or you good? You want to go see it? And that's what it felt like. So I'm glad that that you found your own personality in your restaurants. And for people who are worried that their own personality is getting blocked in their work, yeah, you just got to excise it. You got to go in through the nose, as with a COVID test, and excise it. Have you had to be tested a lot? I bet you have.
I have, yeah. Once
Yeah.
I started doing a bunch of TV again, and there's a massive protocols through the television world where it's like one test 2 days prior, test day prior, test on site, test during, test when leaving, and then test the day after you get home to make sure for tracing purposes.
Right.
So, I mean, it's good. It's allowed the industry to keep moving. And
yeah, no, of course. I was just curious. I hadn't really thought that much. And like you,
yeah, the 10th grade dance was taken away. I think I lost part of my first track meet where I fell down. You know, I told them which direction to go.
I feel like that 10th grade dance was probably blurry anyway.
No, actually,
I didn't know you in 10th grade.
I was 21.
I
was not a partier. I was not the.
It can still be blurry. I'm not saying you were on drugs.
Well, it probably is blurry just from like the old age. But
Yeah.
So let's talk about your musical career.
Okay.
Which a lot of people don't. You have done something with my brother-in-law, Michael Hurst.
I have, yeah.
Radio.
Hurst of One Ring Zero. Yeah.
One Ring Zero, radio. You wrote radio.
Yeah.
And the Magnetic Fields.
Yeah. I mean, how
multifaceted. You're not just a writer. You're a musician.
Yeah, I mean, what I really like about working with Stephen Merritt and the Magnetic Fields is that he is the absolutely in charge. He writes all of those songs. He plays most of the instruments. He records much of the records. He produces and mixes them all. He does all these arrangements. And watching him work is really amazing. And it feels good for me kind of therapeutically to just be like, definitely one of the people playing a little thing. I'll come into the recording studio, we'll work for a couple of days, I'll put these little things down. If we're up on stage, it's like, okay, it's time to play these little things, but it's not my show at all. It's his show, but also he's so good at it. And every time I work with him in a studio, he'll have sent a demo for a song, and sometimes they're really hitting, but oftentimes with the demo, I'm like, okay, if you say so, like, you know how to write a song, and this like sounds okay, but I don't really know what's going to happen. And then we'll work for 2 days. I mean, he's based in New York usually, but there's another musician who works with him here. There are a couple other ones, and he'll fly out to San Francisco and he'll rent a studio for like a week, and we'll all have our 2 or 3 days. And I'll watch the song get built up from the demo. And so like 2 days later, I'm like holding back tears as I listen to the song. And like 2 days previously, I was like, he's usually good, but this isn't very good. And to watch that do it, and the way he works, he's like kind of a perfectionist, but he's super into the happy accidents. And it's fun to watch the studio guys because they're kind of uptight electrician types. And he starts being like, can you put that microphone like behind some sheets of newspaper that are rattling against it? I want to see if like the rattles work. and they're like, oh, it's so like goes against their perfectionism. But then he'll find an engineer who's like, I tried it with newspaper, but try it with wax. Listen to this thing with wax paper. The wax paper is going to be better. And then they start working in that way, and you watch that build up, and it's just really great to be around. So, I mean, I got the gig because I play the accordion, and not very many people play the accordion. So it's like if I played guitar as well as I played accordion, he wouldn't know. I never would have gotten any gigs. But like no one, they're like, oh, I don't know anyone else who plays the accordion. And then, and sometimes people will call me and be like, we need someone really good who plays the accordion. I'm like, that isn't me. And they're like, do you know other people? And I'm like, I'm not going to help you find like, let me in there. How about you decide he doesn't have to be that good? I'd rather go play with you. I'm not going to give my gig away to some good person. And so it's good to be near that. Yeah. But it's the same reason as like, I would love to be near you watching you do stuff, but like, I don't know what I do there. So you'd throw me out.
Nah, there's always fun things to do. So what?
I don't know. Yeah. I think you'd get tired of me. I think the first hour you'd be like, oh, wow, he's watching me. I'm so flattered. And then you'd be like, handler, get out of the way. Like you.
What possessed you to play the accordion? Like, what was it like? Hey, that looks really fun.
Well, I took piano lessons my whole life, so the keyboard was the instrument that I could play. And then when I got to college, I wanted to be in a band because obviously that's the thing to do. And
that was good.
And it was like the late 80s, early 90s when no keyboard instruments were cool. Remember that like horrible time where like synthesizers were all like
Casio really did
want to be, yeah. So like everyone had to be like authentic, which is so tiresome. I feel like sometimes that's coming back now. It's like, it's for real. It's like, it isn't for real. It was made for you. But yeah, so I bought an accordion at the Colombo Brothers Accordion Factory in Marin, and I brought it to college. And so I have often said I'm like the only person who took up the accordion basically to meet women. So. Yeah, but like you're able to be in a bunch of bands because everyone's like, oh, an accordion, we'll try that. Like, why not? Come and get on stage with us for a couple numbers. What's the worst that could happen? So it's pretty fun.
That's amazing. So
do you play an instrument?
No.
No, nothing at all?
No. Nothing.
No.
The grill fork at the restaurant.
Okay. Because I could picture you being like a bassist in a really horrible band when you were in high school, no?
No, I never picked up music. It was never, I mean, I love listening to it and it's a real big part of my life, but physically playing an instrument was just, I wasn't having dyslexia too, also trying to read notes. Everything's like,
oh, right. Yeah.
Doesn't work. Neither did algebra. Whoever thought the idea of putting numbers and letters to equal a math equation was a good idea? Who was that fool?
Some people really get turned on by math.
Well, that's great. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but like,
no, yeah. But I mean, I think it's like when you look at couples sometimes and you're like, who in the world would find that person attractive? And the answer is that person right there standing next to them. I'm watching it happen.
Yeah.
And I feel that way with like subjects that I'm not interested in too. It's like someone thinks algebra is hot. Someone cannot wait to go take algebra home.
Ooh,
yeah.
Let's just say I did not pass algebra.
Well, there's still time. You can go back and finish.
No, thank you. I've tried to help my son with his homework. Holy crap. I'm like, dude, go ask him.
Yeah, that is like there's a weird divergence when you're raising a kid when the homework gets, right? Because like when they're 8, you're like, let me help you with that 2 + 2 you're working so hard on. And then suddenly they just start until you can't even fathom the distance between their homework.
Yeah, and then it's like
kind of liberating because your evenings are free suddenly. You're like, yeah, no one's gonna ask me for help. Like,
I feel bad though. I feel like I should be helping or doing something, and then I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna get him an F. Man, I just better stay out of the way.
I just always say like, this is for sure the most you ever have to work in your whole life is when you're an adolescent. People say it's when you're an adult, but it isn't really. Like when you're an adult, you can choose to become a workaholic like Chris, or you can arrange your life in some other way. But when you're in high school, it's like you have to if no one would take the job of high school student if it were a job. Like if you were like, Chris, Daniel, my restaurants went under. Do you have a job? And I was like, yeah, I have a job. It starts at 8:30 in the morning, first of all. We need you to get to this room and think really hard about United States history for 45 minutes. And then a bell rings and we want you to run down a corridor. And when you get to the end of the corridor, go into another room and there you're going to think about Catcher in the Rye. And you do that for the rest of the day. And people will be like, that's an insane job. I don't want that job. And we give that job, not only do we give it to gazillions of people, but we give it to people whose brains and bodies are like least equipped for that. Like we give it to the people whose brains and bodies are going completely out of control. They should be doing like one thing very calmly. Instead, we're just like run down the hallway. Now you're in a play. Like,
oh, that's actually a really good point. If we compare the way that other mammals are treated by their parents, it's like coddling and making sure they're safe and teaching life skills. And we're like, all right, go to school. Head off, next, just like you said.
I guess it depends on the species. You do see those species who are just like, okay, you hatched out of the egg like 10 minutes ago. It's time to be hunting, and the babies are like, but it's just the world. I'm like, nope, gotta fly, gotta hunt. You gotta find grubs in like 20 minutes or you're gonna die. Yeah, so it depends on the species, I guess.
So where's your book tour headed? Where are you headed for this book tour?
Not very many places, mostly on the screen because everyone's nervous. I'm going to go to Chicago because there's a festival there that's outdoors. And I have a bunch of stuff scheduled for the fall. We're all just kind of rolling the dice and seeing. I don't know. I'm in favor of scheduling everything and canceling it at the last minute because everyone understands. But some people are nervous. It's a weird time because my instinct is not to live by fear, right? If anyone's ever like, I'm anxious about this, I don't want to do it. I'm like, that's not a good reason. But I'm like, well, it is a real pandemic.
Yeah.
So we have to let some anxiety in.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
That's definitely the truth. So one of the things I'm curious about, how long does it take start to finish? Like you come up with the idea and you're working it out. How long does it take start to finish? Like for instance, let's just talk about Poison for Breakfast. What was this, start to finish? Like, did you have previous ideas after you'd finished the last one? How does that work? How does that process work?
I mean, I had an idea for this book and I was chewing it over, but I didn't know really if it was like a book length idea or not, which is something that happens to me. Like I have an idea and I'm like, I kind of see where it takes me and I don't know what it is. But then I had this luxury of having a more time free than I'd had. And it was the summer, they were just beginning to film a series of unfortunate events. And like the company had like pushed me away from it, as usually happens with me in large entertainment companies. Like they love me for a while and they're like, oh, get out of here. And so I thought I was going to be like on a set every day watching this thing happen. And instead I had this chunk of time. And I thought, instead of figuring out if this is like a book idea, instead of like taking long walks and taking some notes and thinking about it for a while, maybe just dive in because no one knows that you're doing it. It felt like a magic secret. And so I just started writing it. I wrote some of it in a library in Massachusetts, most of it, and then some of it in the library in Vancouver where they were filming the show. And no one knew I was working on it. So then I had this like first draft of this strange book. Because I mean, we haven't talked about the book a lot, which is fine, but it's like,
well, we're getting there.
It's weird for me. I feel it's like it's a weird book, and I kind of hid it for a while. I hid it all that fall, and then when the new year came, I took it out again, and I worked, and then I like worked it up. So that was like, I don't know how many, I never know how many months. What does it count? If it's sitting in a box and no one's looking at it, I don't know if that counts as time that I'm working on it. And then it took a while to publish this book because it's a strange book compared to the other Lemony Snicket books. It has like a more meandering, it's more philosophical. It touches upon some things that made some children's publishers uncomfortable. So they had to think about that for a while. And now it's out. So this has been kind of a long journey from the idea to the publication. That took a few years, but usually I kind of write a first draft in like a frenzy of activity, and then I put it in a box. And I like to put it away for like a year, but sometimes it can't be that long. And sometimes it turns out to be longer. But I love putting it away because I put it away and then I kind of half remember it and then it comes up again and I'm like, oh, here it is. I know how to make this better. Like I know how to do this. I'm not in the first rush of thinking everything's terrific. I'm in a more discerning brain.
So you let it marinate.
Yeah. No, I knew you'd find a metaphor. Yeah, you let it marinate.
Well, I mean, it's like you get the initial idea out and you put it down, and then you come back to it after you've like you just process it internally, and then you just spit it all out. That's
And
amazing.
do you have ideas like that come to you for changing something?
Yeah, I mean, food wise, it's always the same way. You know, you have this initial idea and you put it out and you taste it and you just kind of the difference.
Have you ever been like serving your 1,000th whatever chicken dish that you've made, and then you're like, oh, chestnuts or whatever, like, oh, I should have been doing this all this is better.
That happens a lot. It happens a lot. You know,
I feel sad for those people who have the first version.
You know, and it's funny because people talk about that actually a lot. They're like, is it when you do a dish, is it like start to finish and then it goes right to the plate? Sometimes it is because it works, but then there's always ways to tweak things and make it better.
Yeah.
And I think you get in a mindset of, well, I have to do it now because the season's going to change and that product that I was working with is going to go away. So I'm trying to get it when it's the product's at its peak. I don't want it to vanish because some of these things have such a short timeline. And that's like, then you do the one and it's on the menu, and then you start reiterating and like playing, and things are evolving as it goes. But then it just creates turmoil for your staff because they're like, well, it looks different than yesterday. And what did you do different? And why did you change it? And the guest really liked it yesterday. So I think there's that happy medium of making the guest really happy, wanting to return for that flavor profile, but also at the same time finding the best balance for what we're trying to do.
Yeah, you really nail that so well. I mean, and again, it's like there's something I think you really balance this like real inventive streak with also like real accessibility, right? Like I've been to so many restaurants where they're like, we're doing all this invention. I'm like, I know, but like then it turns out to be like a square of weird mousse on top of something that like, I know you like wilted it in a special way, but it just looks wilted. And you're right, I've never had it before. There's no way I could make it at home, but it's not good though. And that I feel like your restaurants are always full of like, I've never seen anything like this before. And also like, but it tastes, but it's accessible. It's like delicious in my mouth, like something that I've had all the time, which is like, that's a rare blend. And it's certainly what I want to do. Like I like being inventive and experimental on the page, but I want people to read it. I don't want to be like a weirdo where people are like, I can see how that might be a good idea, but I don't want to read it. I want people in there with me.
So talk a little bit about this, Poison for Breakfast. How did you come up with the name? And give us a little, don't give us too much because what'll happen, but you don't want to ruin it for everybody. But at the same time, you want to bring them in. So I'm excited. I haven't had by the way, before you say anything, I haven't had a chance to read it. It showed up in a handwritten envelope yesterday at the door. A FedEx envelope without a FedEx. It just said Chris Cosentino address sitting on the front.
Yeah, I think we figured out like, they were like, we're going to FedEx it to him. And I was like, I can almost see that guy's house from here. Like, maybe we can cut down on the carbon footprint. Like it's
exactly
a little bit today. Yeah, well, it is a book that is kind of a murder mystery and kind of philosophical, sociological meandering. But basically
You just hit mute. You're muted.
I am?
Not anymore. You just hit the button. Oh. There you go.
All right.
I heard. Start that one over. I missed it.
Two things kind of happened to me at once. One is that I wrote a note to myself and I didn't recognize the handwriting. So I found this note and I was like, who said this to me? And that was interesting to me to think about like a threatening note arriving. It wasn't a threat, but like a mysterious note arriving. And then I remembered that when my son was really little, I said to him, I was trying to make him eat something, and I was like, eat this, it's like, it's not poison. And he was like, yeah, but like I'm getting older and older, like, so actually, like, when I eat this, I'm getting closer to death, so it is kind of poison, which I thought was amazing. And I thought about for like a year before I started the book. And so both those things happened. And also I got interested in writing something that was basically nonfiction for a younger audience. And that because I'd done all these kind of narrative stories, I was interested in writing like a nonfiction book the way when you're a grown-up, you read a nonfiction book, that's like about something that happened or about an idea that you see places, the way this podcast is like about an idea with examples. And that seemed interesting to me. So that's where it came from. But yeah, but Poison for Breakfast, it took me a while to find the exact title, but once I had Poison for Breakfast, I was like, that's exactly the title that I wanted all along. And poison's always really interesting, particularly when you're young. It's like poison. There's things that you can eat and you'll die. And particularly when you're young, when like there's already stuff you eat that you like don't like, or you don't understand, you don't want it in your mouth yet. And then there's like, and then that there's like there is a thing that is poison. Yeah. I remember we had a yard growing up. We had a tree in our yard that had berries that were poisonous. I remember my parents were like, oh yeah, those are poisonous, don't eat them. I was like, but it's in our yard. Like, we're like,
that happens to every kid.
Yeah.
And how about apple seeds? Don't eat apple seeds. That's where strychnine comes from.
Yeah.
You do the math. It's like you need to eat 3 million apple seeds before you actually kill.
Yeah. Right. But I was like baffled, I was just kind of like, why is there poison? Like, why would there be anything poisonous? Why haven't we fixed that? We should get rid of everything poisonous in the world. Because your understanding of poison is from like, creepy thrillers, like drip, 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 instead of like poison, like the way have already poisoned the planet and it's too late for all of us, instead of that way.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's another one. That'll be your next book.
What else? What else you got? What else do you want to talk about?
So tell me a little bit more about, where will this journey take people?
A lot of it is about writing books, about writing and making books, because people were curious about how I did that. So some of even what I've talked to you about is in that book. Some of it is about other books and movies and memories I have that bring together these ideas. But basically it starts out as a murder mystery, and it kind of starts wondering about death and thinking about death. And that was something that I was really interested in when I was a child. Not only in kind of stories where there was the threat of death or people were dying, but like that deep mystery of that life will stop. And I think that young people like to think about it a lot, and they're often chased away from that idea, right? The idea of like, don't be afraid, it's not going to happen. This is like not something to worry about. And instead to kind of not to live with the fear, but to live with the idea long enough that the fear becomes something else. So
was that the hot topic? Was that the hot button about the publishing that was really the nerve?
A little bit, yeah. There's some stuff about the settling of the United States in it, about the destruction of native cultures in it. There's some stuff about a jazz musician that kind of walks on the strange culture of race and exploitation that America's built. Yeah, but I mean, these are all things that young people love to talk about. Yeah, that young people love to think about. And they're things that don't have necessarily a super clear political argument. So I think that we're in a time where just kind of thinking about an idea and seeing where it goes is less fashionable than like having a hot take on it. It's not a hot take book. It's slow simmer.
Awesome. I can't wait. All right. So we're going to do what I like to call the rapid fire questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
No answer's wrong. It's just personal.
They always say that, and it's never true.
Oh no! This one, there's no right or wrong in this. It's just personal. Okay, so this is all based around food. So this is like the fun part.
Okay.
Easy part. Hamburger, hot dog.
Hamburger.
Ketchup or mustard.
Mustard.
Dijon or deli mustard?
Deli.
Really?
Yeah, but I would like a horseradishy. I
Okay.
like a horseradishy mustard. Yeah. I like a Chinese mustard too.
Oh yeah, Chinese mustard's always good.
I'm trying not to like break the binary of all your questions by refusing the answer, but
No, it's fine. There's no
Yeah.
Martini, shaken or stirred?
Stirred.
Vodka.
Because I like a gin martini.
Oh, there was the next question.
Yeah. And I don't, I mean, they always say it'll bruise the gin. And I mean, I don't even really know what that means. But it was a nice thing. Like I learned that when I was young. I learned it because we used to like to watch the movie Annie Mame in my family, and they have a line about like, you don't want to bruise the gin. And I thought that was really funny. And then I taught it to my son when he was really little. And so he was like, I'm not going to bruise the gin. And so
I remember you telling me that story.
Yeah, he won't do it. Like now, he'll make a cocktail for me now, but he's just like, ugh, he's like a sour employee. But there was kind of a magic window where he would make a cocktail where he was way too young for it, and he loved doing it. And so just company would come over, and I'd be like, make everyone a Manhattan. And he'd be like, right away. And I'd be like, huh? And they'd be like, what? He can't have a Manhattan. And I'm like, oh, he's not having one. He's just making them for us.
I remember you telling me that. I was dying.
Yeah, and a cocktail spoon is good. It's so much fun, more fun to stir than to shake.
Yeah, especially when they don't put the lid on and they go like this.
Yeah, but you're never at home. I always shake over the sink because you're never 100%.
No,
that is not going to fall apart in your hands.
Yeah, for sure. Beef or pork?
Well, beef. I mean, I was raised Jewish, so I didn't eat a lot of pork until I was like a teenager. So I would say beef.
Granted, though, when you did come to Coxcomb, it was international waters. You were definitely down with the swine.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's nothing I don't eat for any religious reasons, and there's hardly anything I don't eat. But I wasn't raised with pork, and so like when I see it on the menu, I'm not instinctively drawn to it. I'm instinctively drawn to like a good steak or a good
Okay. So nigiri or sashimi?
That's really got to depend on where you're at, right? Like if you're just like at a sushi place and you don't know it, then you're gonna get nigiri because it might not be good. Like bad sashimi is the worst. That's the terrible thing. Yeah. Like if I was someplace where I knew it was going to be good, I would go sashimi. But like nigiri is more reliable.
Sea urchin or caviar?
Oh, I gotta have them both. I can't choose. I gotta have both. Yeah. Like if I were at a restaurant and they were like, it either comes with sea urchin or caviar, I would be like, can you show me those again? And then I would just take them because they're so good and they're really good together.
They are delicious together. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Pasta or noodles?
That seems a little redundant. It seems like sleep or a nap.
Well, they're different. They're totally different.
And so are these questions like, I'm going to choose one for the rest of my life?
No, they're just
like,
what you prefer. What you like, what do you gravitate towards most? Like if you're going to go out, are you going to go, you know what? I prefer a cacio e pepe or I want a pho. So there's your noodle and then there's your pasta.
In this town going out, I want a pho.
There you go. See? Dumplings or ravioli?
Dumplings.
Burrito, taco?
Burrito.
Burrito, huh?
I mean, yeah.
They're kind of, I mean, you know it was invented here, right?
Yeah, and they were just such a staple of my life from like 14 to 26. That was like 70% of what I ate were burritos from like one of 4 restaurants.
A lot of people there. It's like, can't not have this.
Yeah.
Lobster or Dungeness crab?
Dungeness crab.
It's kind of a story, right?
Yeah, well, we are often in Cape Cod in the summer, and the lobster is really good. But I feel like the only thing with lobster is to have lobster. And like Dungeness crab, it's like you can, you put a little of the pasta, you put a little on your steak, you put a little like a salad,
yeah,
put a little egg. Yeah, it's like Dungeness crab is welcome anywhere.
Raw oysters or raw clams?
Raw oysters.
Not many people dig the raw clams. I grew up with them. I love them.
I like them, but I like a raw oyster. Yeah, I do.
Chocolate or fruit?
Fruit. I don't really like. I don't have much of a sweet tooth.
What fruit?
I like a blueberry. I like a stone fruit. I have some figs in my fridge right now that are
Right now is definitely figs are in full right now.
I've never done this before, but I want to make a giant fig Newton. I want to make like a shortbread and then spread fresh figs all over it and another shortbread and cut it up and serve it. That's got to be good, right?
Oh, for sure.
How could that not be good?
Fig Newton cake. You can make a giant one.
Yeah.
I actually have that recipe. I'll send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, I want it.
Last one.
Yeah, I like fruit. Okay, I'm ready.
Coffee or tea?
I like an espresso. If it's actually coffee or tea, then
to me, coffee falls under espresso, cappuccino, Americano, press
like,
pot.
I hardly ever want a cup of coffee, but I want an espresso. Like whenever I do a podcast, whenever.
I do Americanos all the time. I'm kind of a coffee fanatic.
At Coxcomb, you used to not do tea.
Correct.
I remember. And I ate at Coxcomb right after Trump was elected with some friends, and I had a nasty cold. And I remember that like I was like, oh, I should stay home. I have a cold. And then I was like, I can't, like, a terrible president's just been elected. I need to like eat and drink with my friends right now. And I got there and they made me a hot toddy with the espresso water. And I remember that it came and I was like, okay, but like, I knew they had hot water. Why do they sell tea here? What's the anti-tea stand? So you just like coffee so much, you're like, screw the tea people?
It's not that I dislike tea. I just feel that with coffee, you can have an Americano, you can have an espresso, a double espresso, right? A cappuccino. But when it comes to tea, it's like books, right? There's thousands of blends and flavors, and everybody gets all butthurt if you don't have their special tea. It's like, is this decaffeinated tea? Is this green tea? Is this black tea? Is this Earl Grey? And it just keeps going and going and going. It becomes like your spice cabinet, right? It becomes too much. So I was finally just like,
I see that, yeah.
I was just like, you know what? We're never going to make everybody happy, right? So let's just not do it.
Yeah.
So
actually always remember that I was with my mom once at this restaurant, and my mom said, I'd like a cup of tea. What kind do you have? And that the server said, all the regular kinds. And my mom was like put off by it. And I was like, that's such a great answer.
I mean, there's if you think about it, there's so many varieties of tea. It can be overwhelming, and then you have to have like a tea program, and you have to have somebody really like figure it out. And it's like, is it loose leaf? Is it in a bag? And then people have expectations of a restaurant having this certain experience, and you can...
Right. And I will say the tea menu at the terrible restaurant with the fancy paragraph, that's really awful. Where they're like, it's monkey picked and it's supposed to be good for dreaming. I'm like, give me a break, man. Come on.
How do you know it was monkey picked? We called the monkeys and we told them which ones. How do you know they picked the right ones?
And is that less exploitative or more exploitative?
I don't know. Wasn't there just a huge thing about that, about the exploitation of monkeys picking something recently? It was like some fruit, or I don't know.
I believe it. Yeah. But I don't know how you would profit share with them or something. I don't know how to unionize a monkey.
They get extra bananas at the end of the week. I don't know.
Maybe that's not what they want. Maybe that's just a stereotype, man. You gotta go for that.
Oh, I think you just really got me right there. I'm just gonna have to go wallow in my own self-pity for my assumption of monkey choice of banana eating. Daniel, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule.
It's a pleasure to see you, my friend, and to speak with you.
For sure. Let's once you're not on the Zoom travel doing your book tour, let's have some coffee somewhere.
Yeah, that's great. Let's like catch a rabbit and cook it and close a bar.
I can do that.
I know. I can't do any of those things.
Well, that'd be fun. You know, maybe you guys come on over for dinner one night.
Great.
All right.
All right. Sayonara, my friend.
Appreciate it. You have a great one. And so if everybody wants to check it out, Poison for Breakfast, Lemony Snicket. Oh, look at that. Him.
Good one too. Good one for yourself, everybody. Bye.